This is the Without Losing Your Cool podcast. We have entrepreneurs, climate changers, entertainers, and survivors turned thrivers. You do not want to miss a thing. Oh my gosh, Cynthia, thank you so much for being on Without Losing Your Cool. I know I said it to you earlier, but I truly, truly feel like I've won the lottery. I mean, anybody watching and listening right now, Cynthia Dale is one of the most decorated, successful, celebrated Canadian actors ever, 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 ever. And it's just so wonderful to have you here. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I want to jump right into this. Okay, so I grew up in a household with brothers. I was the middle between an older and younger brother. And we were literally competitive about absolutely every single thing. Like my mom had to count our Smarties. It was ridiculous. So I have always thought it was incredible that both you and your sister were in the same field. What was that like at home?
Well, actually, growing up, all four kids were in the business for a while.
Oh my God.
So it was just sort of what we did. It was just like what all the kids did. And I guess Jenny and I were the only ones who stayed crazy enough to stay in the business. Basically, Jenny and I never competed for the same parts. So it wasn't a thing. Like we didn't, if she was right for a part, then there's no way I could have been right for the part. And
Right.
I was more of a musical theater kid than she was. So we just didn't do the same stuff. So it never was an issue as far as wanting to get the same kind of work that the other one got. And as far as having someone else in the business, I guess it's like a married couple who are both in the business. You know, it sort of helps sometimes because you can relate to what you're going through. You have someone to talk about the issues with. And that's sort of what it's like with Jenny. And Jenny and I are really close. We always have been.
That's awesome. I love that. And you know what? It's interesting that you said that about being a partnership and being a couple in the same house, because way back, that's how Yannick and I met. We'd met through a mutual friend at school,
Oh, wow.
but we were acting at the same time when we first started dating. And I'll never forget, we shared an agent, and this agent looked at me and I said, "Why is he getting so many auditions and what's going on?" And she said, "Well, honey, there can't be two successful actors in one household." Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not with that agent anymore, right?
No, I fired her. I did fire her. But you know what?
Yeah.
I've got to be honest with you. That was something that stuck with me. Like that was something that I took on and I bought into and I believed. I was young. I was impressionable. You know what I mean? So I think it's incredible that you and your sister had that camaraderie and you had one another to lean on rather than having somebody whispering in either of your ears being like you were competitors and that there's not enough space.
We were just, and you know what it is too? Our vibration and our energy is very different from each other. So we really had our own lane. We were never sort of, well, like I said, we were just never competing for the same parts. It just wasn't, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. So, okay, let's go backward. 4 children in the family, all 4 in the arts.
4 children.
Break it down to my listeners. How do 4 kids from one household and all having a love for acting and performing?
Well, we had a Mama Rose for a mama. My mom was a glorified taxi driver, and my mom took us to like every job and every commercial, like everything we ever did. And I was 5 when I started. And Jenny, you know, the first thing she ever did in 1965, she played Baby June in Gypsy at the Royal Alexander Theatre. So
she did not. Literally, she played Baby June.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was in Finian's Rainbow, and my sister was in Gypsy as well. And so we started that young. We started sort of when the business was starting in Toronto in the early 60s. The television sort of commercials and industry was just starting. So the kids who started out with it worked all the time.
Right, of course.
By the time I was 12 years old, I'd done like 75 commercials. I worked all the time. The trade-off for that was that I wasn't at school. And so I was made fun of because I was different or odd, or kids make fun of what they don't understand, and they could see you on TV when they went home from school. So they would
Right.
make fun of you and beat you up and bully you because you were different, you know?
Wow. That, you know what?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's wild to me. What I find
Hmm.
fascinating about that is that so many people on the outside now, I mean, with Instagram and TikTok and all that, everybody wants their 10 or 15 minutes of fame. And now, because of social media, it's so easy for so many to get that. And I
Hmm.
find it so interesting because I wonder if, and I don't know, but I wonder if in today's time that kids would be more keen to latch on and sort of find out how did that happen for you? How did you make that happen? I wonder if kids are more
Maybe.
like
Yeah.
little hustlers now as opposed to back then they were jealous
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Well, the Disney Channel didn't exist. So, like, all those kids shows that you'd watch with kids in them or anything like that, they didn't exist.
right,
We were just weirdos. And the teachers, weren't great either because we weren't ever there in their class. I got kicked out of like 3 classes because the teachers said, she's never here. So, I can't teach her. Like,
wow.
so it wasn't an easy, and of course, there were not high schools or schools for the performing arts back then in the early 60s. Those things didn't exist. So you sort of
Right.
had to try to make it work in both worlds.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
a little kid and your mom is clearly spread thin with 4 kids, running 4 kids around. And, I was
Hmm.
in school in the early 70s and I remember my dad put me into modeling and I had a teacher not dissimilar to what you're saying about teachers. I had to leave in the middle of the day to go do a photo shoot. And this teacher stood me up on the desk and said to everybody, "Oh, everybody, say goodbye to the model. She has to leave now." And she humiliated me
Hmm.
and would pull me out
Hmm.
of class, saying, "Oh, you're
Hmm.
dumb." You're like literally would call me dumb and say I was behind because I was missing, I was missing class to go and work. And what I found is that what teachers need to know if you're a teacher and you're listening and you have a child who's in the arts who's in your class, which is hopefully it's different by now, is that what you say to a child and how you treat a child who has an extraordinary ability to be a performer at a young age is the kids are going to witness that and they're going to then also treat that
Hmm.
child with the same yardstick. They're going
Hmm.
to measure them by that yardstick and they're going to think it's okay. So I'm sorry you went through
Hmm.
that. And were you all in the same school? Did you at least have one another to lean on when that was happening?
No, at that point, both my sisters were at the National Ballet as day students, so they were doing school there. They weren't in the same grade school as me at that point. And my younger brother was he was 4 years younger than, so he really didn't feel it the same way.
Oh,
My brother is not in the industry anymore. My middle sister is in the industry, but she's not a performer. She's a producer, online producer, and so or line producer. And so, yeah, it's only Jenny and I who are wacky enough to still be
I'd
out
like to
there.
say you're successful enough to still be in it because you know what? Yannick used to say this all the time. He used to say, you know, it's not necessarily and I'm not saying this about you, but he always said this. He's like, it's not necessarily the most talented person that gets to have the longest career. It's the person who's crazy enough to stick with it.
Oh yeah, but and it's also, I mean, I know lots of people who are unbelievably talented who aren't working. There's a
Yeah.
lot of luck.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, talent, absolutely, and discipline and all that. But there's a lot of luck because there's a
Mm.
lot of really great actors who aren't working. They just haven't had the break or they don't get them consistently or, that's just what happens.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, again, Yannick talks about it a lot. He's like, I'm the luckiest guy. He's like, Murdoch's a great character, but and it's not incredibly complicated. He's not complex. He's like, I'm not inventing, I'm not a rocket scientist over here. I'm just playing a guy who's set back in time. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of humility
Hmm.
wrapped in that, but there is a lot of truth to that. And what we're witnessing now, and I don't know if you're experiencing this, and hopefully you're not, but I'm reading articles about, and Yannick's run into this a few times, where guys who have more followers on social media are getting acting roles that technically, somebody with a 40-year career and
Oh,
a resume 3 pages
yeah,
long are
yeah,
not getting
no.
because of lack of followers. Are you experiencing that?
I have maybe 2,000 followers on any social media. I have no followers. I have like it's just not a thing for me, or like even
Yeah.
though I post and stuff, but I have this little group that um I mean, I don't work that much anymore. At this age, it just doesn't it's not the same as it was for me.
Mm.
But I if I had to get a job on the amount of followers I have, I really would never work. I can't stand that about the industry, that it doesn't matter how much talent you have. I have dear friends who are producers in the industry and who cast their projects, major projects, on the followers that people have. That's the reality now. And I hate that about the business. It's so not about talent. I mean, yes, I say luck, but I don't consider the amount of followers you have the luck that I was talking about as far as what happens when you get a job. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I hate that about the industry. I just hate it.
Yeah, and I guess that really reveals the financial beast of the industry, right? Like it's all
Yeah,
about dollars and cents
yeah,
and bottom line and what they're being able to
yeah,
pocket at the end. But the reality is
yeah.
that just because somebody has followers doesn't mean that the people that are going to want to watch your project are interested in those people,
Truly, truly.
right?
But you
So,
can't they don't believe, or that doesn't work for them. That's too many variables for them to think about. It's easier for them to just look at the amount of followers somebody has, and so, well, there's two actors who could do this part, but this one has more followers, so that's the one who gets the part. You go, really? Like, thank
yeah.
God I don't need it, and for my soul and for my
Yes.
my my own energy of life. I don't need it. I don't need this business or that business for it. I have enough other, thank God, in my life.
I love that. Without losing your cool, we've got your gift giving needs covered. Whether it's a holiday gift, if it's a support gift, if it's a little extra love that somebody in your life needs gift, or a parent who needs a little more guidance, advice, and the knowing that they are not alone out there in their parenting journey, we have got you covered. If you know somebody who is deepening their relationship to self, grab them the Self Love Bundle. It includes the Loving Yourself Without Losing Your Cool book, Loving Yourself journal that accompanies the book, and love notes for adults. If you have somebody in your life who's expecting or has a little from 0 to 10, then the Raising Kids Bundle is the perfect gift set for them. It comes with the Raising Your Kids Without Losing Your Cool and love notes for littles. If you have a parent in your inner circle who is heading into tween and teendom, boy, have we got the gift set for you. Parenting your teens without losing your cool comes with love notes for tweens or teens. You get to choose. All of this is available for you at ChantelleBisson.com. If you're shopping ChantelleBisson.com for the very first time, don't forget to add yourself to the newsletter to claim your shopping discount code. Go now. So, what are those other things in your life that feed your soul? Because for everybody, it's so different, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's different right now at 62 too. It's very different. And I think after the last few years with what the world has gone through, it's different. I'm in Scotland because this feeds my soul. The beach, the highlands, the sky, this feeds my soul. I love to paint. It feeds my soul. Those are the kinds of things that I do to feed my soul. I love to sing and dance, but it's not the same thing anymore that it was 10 years ago for me. It just isn't.
I love that. What I've been coming across recently at 54 is I'm witnessing sort of that, not sort of, but I'm witnessing that feeling of invisible years. So, and what I mean by that is, my girls are grown. They're all on their own paths and their own journey. Yannick is very, very busy with his career. And yes, I have, my Without Losing Your Cool brand and I have my Marina, but it's this very interesting phenomenon of who am I right now? My my mothering years are behind me and it's anything is possible within these years. Did you, because now you're talking about singing and dancing and performing used to be what fed your soul. Now here at 62, you have all these other beautiful things that are more enriching to you now. Would you say
Mhm.
that there was a transition? And if there was a transition, can you pinpoint those years of where that transition took place?
I don't know if it was a transition that I was aware of. I think for me, it was sort of something that happened after. I only have one kid, a boy that is the light of my life. He's my favorite person in the world. And being a mom is and has always been the best part in the world that I could ever play or do or be. And I always say in my next life, I want 10 kids, but actually, I just want 10 more of him, just like him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because it
And where
was,
is he?
and it is. He's in Toronto, and we're incredibly close. We're a very close family, the three of us. We spend a lot of time together. We like each other, which is great, and we love each other, which is great too. And so when he left and went off to school, and because of what Pete does and his job, I was like a single mom, 6 days a week for
Right.
the first 10 or 15 years of Willie's life, other than summertime when Pete had off. So it was really just me and Willie for a lot of the time. So when he left, I mean, I always said, so I have the nervous breakdown in my date book. That's going to happen. Like I know it. I'm going to have a sort of fall, I'm going to fall off the cliff when he leaves, which I did a bit.
Yeah.
So it was just like, I just was really sad. I was just really, really sad
Mhm.
that like that part of life was over. And thank God we were close. So I got to see him a lot. He went to university in Toronto, and that helped. But still, the transition was big. As far as work go, I always had work, but I don't necessarily feel like that is what helped me. And there wasn't ever a moment where I went looking for something else to fill that had been in my life when you're raising a kid, because I don't think you can ever find that, like you said, the mom years, when those mom years
Right.
are over, there's a hole, but I don't ever remember consciously trying to fill that up. And as far as Scotland and this filling me up in my life, I mean, I have a big garden in Stratford. We live in Stratford, and
Right.
very old trees in my backyard, and those trees are probably my best friends. I have spent more time with those trees in the last 20 years than I have with anybody. And so that
Let
garden,
me
those trees,
let me jump in there because I
yeah.
have referred to trees in the past as so healing and so therapeutic. When you say the trees are your friend, explain to my listeners what you mean by that, because I'm pretty sure I know what you mean, because I have trees on my cottage property that I feel the same way, and we own some acreage, and we'll go and walk that, and I spend time with those trees. Explain that to me, because I'm shocked that you said that, because not many people talk about trees in that way.
Oh, yeah. The wood wide web. Yeah, I don't think I could have got through the last 20 years of my life with everything that life is and can throw at you without those trees. And I love them in the wintertime when they're bare, and I
Yeah.
love them when the leaves fall. And I spend a lot of time with those trees and talking to those trees and listening to those trees. And yes, somebody may say, well, you're sort of crazy. Yeah, well, I'm going to get off my unicorn and slap you across the face for saying that.
Go spend some time with trees and then tell me that you don't feel transformed after
Yeah,
spending time with them. I mean, I
completely,
totally get what you're saying.
completely.
I totally get what you're
Yeah.
saying. So, your son, what does he do? Where he's in Toronto, and I know,
He's in Toronto. He works for a sports media company called
oh wow,
Uninterrupted. Yeah, so he's on his
that's very
way.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
He's very
So,
happy. Thank God.
in your childhood, was there ever a time that you recall feeling that you were doing something you didn't want to do? Like, what 5-year-old wakes up? I mean, I knew the first time I stepped on stage at 4 and I performed and people clapped, I was like, that that is it. I am here for this. I could spend the rest of my life in this limelight. I was in at 4. But that's
Mhm.
unusual, that kids make that connection. Was it a you thing? Like, how does a 5-year-old wake up and say, "Hey, I'm gonna spend my entire
No,
life."
I don't think it, like, I don't remember, I don't think I ever did that as a thought of that. I
Mhm.
know, I mean, we got in the business. The first thing we did was the summer stock at the Royal Alexandra Theatre in 1965 because our dance teacher put us in for the audition, and that's how we got the job. And then, we got an agent and sort of sort of got us out auditioning. And everyone, even though I say, yes, my mom was a Mama Rose, for sure she was. She was a stage mother. But
Mhm.
she couldn't get us the job. She could just get us
Right.
to the job or get us to the audition. We're still the ones who had to go into the room and get the audition, like get the part. For sure, I loved doing it. And I also, you know, when I was on set, like I grew up in the halls of 90 Sumac Street at CBC. I was a regular on the Tommy Hunter show. I was a regular on the Wayne and Schuster shows. So I spent a lot of time working with adults. And because it was a job, I was
Right.
treated with respect. I was treated because I had to hit my mark and I had to know my lines and I had to know my songs and I had to know my dance step. So I was treated way better than I was at school, where,
Which is
to go
crazy.
back to what we were saying before, I wasn't. Yeah, it was by the teachers, made fun. It was awful. I didn't like grade school at all. So
No.
it was a world I loved. Every single day after school, all my life, me and my sisters, we went to the dance studio all the time. And that's great to do all through high school, but you do hit a point where all your friends are going off to the parties on Friday or Saturday night and you're still going to the dance studio. And the boy you have a crush on is going to the party and you're not going to the party, and all those things don't work. If you can
Right.
make it through your teenage years, then it's a lot easier, and I guess it sort of stuck with that.
I'm just listening to you and all of that, it sounds like a heavy load to carry as a child, to have wanting that sense of normalcy with your
Hmm.
peers at school, but only getting it with adults at work. Was
Hmm.
there ever any time during those years, particularly in high school, as you're sharing, everybody was out doing all these things and you were in training, essentially like an athlete, you were in training.
Hmm.
Were there
Hmm.
ever any moments where you were faced with, is this going to be worth it? Did you ever have to do a check and balance, or were you always just like, this is where I feel most me with these people in this
No,
world?
no, I think I always knew this is what I wanted to do. I think I was born to be doing this. I really
I'd say
do.
so.
I don't think you can teach talent. I think you can hone it, you can polish it, you can foster it, but I don't think you can teach it. I think there's a raw something you're born with, and I think that luckily I was born with that and a drive to do it. Mm.
That
I-
I love that. And I love that you own that, because there's so much false humility in this industry, right? Where people are like, "Oh, I don't know," but I love that you're claiming it, you're owning it. You're like, "No, I had what it took, and not only did I have the
Mhm,
raw talent, but I had the work ethic
mhm,
and the passion and the
mhm,
commitment to continue to foster
mhm,
it, to hone it, to expand on it." So I
mhm.
that's amazing. See,
I
this is what
am
I
a
love
worker
about
bee.
you.
Yeah, no, I am a worker bee. Like I was happy to do and it's nothing like what Yonex is, but we did 7 years on Strictly. I was happy to do that. At Stratford, it was a 10-month season. I was happy to run a show for 10 months. Like I love that. I thrive on that. That's good. I could do that.
What would you say, outside of your being a mom and your relationship with your son and that journey, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment in your life thus far? Because you've still got so much life to live, but up until now.
Oh my gosh, my greatest accomplishment. No, I can't. It's hard to think of anything other than being a mom. Like that to me is my greatest accomplishment.
Did you always want to be a mom?
I think probably yes, I absolutely thought I would, but it wasn't one of those things that I I didn't do it until I was almost 38. So like I wish I don't know, like I don't know. I wish I'd started younger. I don't know. Like I said, I wish I had 10, but
Yeah.
I guess I just always thought, I mean, my sisters had kids, there were always kids around in our family. So it was just, well, of course I'll have a kid. Like it was just, yes, it was going to happen for sure. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What if there was a role you could go back and repeat or redo
Uh-huh.
because you would have made different choices as the character? Is there a role?
No, there's roles I would go back and do because I loved doing them. But I don't think I would go back and do them to fix the character. No, I don't think so.
That's amazing. That's an amazing thing to be able to say as a performer because so often for me, when I was acting, I would look back and rarely did I watch my performances, but if I did,
Mm.
I would go back and be like, oh, I wish I had done X, Y, and Z instead of this. In fact, for some reason, I was fixated last week on a role I'd done on Doc where I was giving birth to twins. And I was tormented for days about, oh, I wish I hadn't fake delivered with that intensity. I don't know
Oh,
why. It came out of nowhere and it just stayed with me for days where I was just like, if I could go back and not have done it that way. So that's why I'm asking
wow.
you that. Like with your
Yeah.
lengthy career,
I
is there anything?
Well, with when you're doing theater and you're doing such a long run, you have a lot of time to figure that out, like to work that out, right? And if you're,
Yeah.
when you were at the festival, like you got a long rehearsal period to figure out the kinks of, what you're going to do. That's why I love the rehearsal period. So,
And don't you
um,
find on stage, because I grew up dancing and being on stage, don't you find on stage that each audience brings out a different part of your performance?
yeah, absolutely. That's the glory. Like, you give this much and the audience gives this much, but it's that in there that is the wonderful mix. You know, e- every show is different because every group is different that is creating that and the mix together. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Hmm.
So, as a
Hmm.
performer, for anybody watching who maybe is in the industry and is right now sitting in those in between years, because it's famous. Every actress speaks on this. Like first you're the sex kitten and the girlfriend, and then you're the mother, and then you've got about 15 years where you're nothing until you can be the old lady. And men don't seem to suffer that same sort of
Mm-mm.
dry spell or,
Hmm.
labeling of you can only be these things at these times. Is there any advice you would give? Because you've gone through that so beautifully, and I mean, outwardly looking in, you've gone through it so beautifully. I'm sure personally there have been times where you maybe felt frustrated about roles, or if there was a dry
Oh,
spell.
absolutely. Oh, tons of dry spells, tons and tons of dry spells. And, I have the rest of my life off now after finishing a job last week. Thankfully, it was a glorious gig. So it's a bit like a mic drop moment for me. It's like if that's the last thing I ever did, that was a really fantastic way to go out. Like I'm okay with that. But I always say to young people, get a business degree. I don't care if you can sing and dance. I mean, obviously you have to do that for, the industry or act, but because you are a business
Yeah.
and you have to pay taxes, you'll have to pay a publicist, you'll have to pay your agent. Yes, you'll have to pay your taxes. You'll have to pay, you might want to start a theater company. You might want to produce a film. Like all the things that, you know, they teach young theater students to learn the greatest Shakespeare monologues or how to sing and dance or whatever it is, but they don't teach them that they're a business. And those things are important.
Important.
So it's great if you can do a time step, but you've got to be able to, figure out a lot more than just that. And as far as in the industry, longevity, I think it's really great when people change and do something else. I think it's
Yeah.
really great when people say, that was then and this is now, and I'm going to go and do something else now. It happens a lot as you get older, obviously, but You know, when our parents were growing up, it was an either or world. You did this, or you did this job, or you did this, that job. You were an accountant, or you were, like a teacher or this. Now
Yeah.
it's an and world. Now you do this and you do that, and you do this and you do that. So you can do many things. You can be a great photographer, and you can paint and sell your paintings, and you can sing and dance, and you can write a book. And like you can do people aren't judged the same way. They're not put in boxes the same
Yeah.
way, or they don't do one job for their entire life and then retire at 65 or whatever and think, what am I going to do now? I mean, I don't quite understand the concept of retirement. You just stop doing what you're doing one day, and then you do something else the next day. Like
Yeah.
what? I guess you just, but you like people always talk about Pete being retired. Well, he's not really. He's busier now than he was before. He just does something else, right? So it's okay if you hit 40 and go, you know what? I don't want to be an actor anymore, or
Mm.
50 or 60 or 25, whatever. But you have to have other things to fill up your life because they will
Mm.
make you a better actor. It's not just about learning how to do scene work. Go and stand amongst the trees, like you said. Go walk in a park. Go walk on a beach. That will fill you up and make you an interesting person. Not just theater school will make you an interesting person.
You know what? There's so much gold in everything that you just said. And I think the thing that I love about it the most is how true it is that we're not defined by one role anymore like our parents were. And the way society, you couldn't, there was no space to be expansive as a human being. You just
Mhm,
were who you were. You went
mhm,
to school, you got a trade, or you became
mhm,
this person and you were a
mhm,
mother. And God forbid if you were a mother and you had any dreams or passions or ideas outside of motherhood, there
mhm,
was just no room for it. So
mhm,
that's such an incredible point of view for everybody who's listening and watching right now. It's like we're in these incredible times where we
mhm,
do have opportunity and we are available to find out who we are in our soul, what
mhm,
feeds us, what brings us joy, what excites us to get up in the morning, and that
mhm,
we have that ability to explore it all. I did a post a while back about priority versus privilege, and a lot of people came at me being like, well, you're a white woman, so of course you are privileged, and I am.
mhm,
But the point of what I was saying is that regardless of our socioeconomic standing or the color of our skin or our gender, what we all have the ability to do, what's available to us because the world is such an interesting place right now, is the opportunity of choice. We do have the choice to go and walk in nature. We do have choice to go and spend time with trees or go dip our feet in a river or in a lake and just we don't need money or affluence or access to spend time in nature to be connected to ourselves to
mhm,
explore other things that feed our soul. So I love that you said all that because I think it's so important for people to remember that, we're not stagnant. We're not
mhm,
just here in that box and you live and die in that box. And I love what you said about Pete too, is that people are like, oh, he's retired. Well, no, he stopped doing what he'd been doing forever because he had other parts of him that he
mhm,
wanted to
mhm, mhm.
explore and be able to honor.
You also have the choice to decide what is the prism you see things through. Victimhood
Mm.
or not, negativity or not, opportunity or not. And it's not just the simple, cliche of glass half full. It's you got a glass. So I could look at the fact that I'm 62 and I don't get hired hardly at all. I go up for a million jobs I don't get. I'm getting old. That's okay. All those things could be really horrendous sort of things that would destroy my soul. Yeah, I'm a keener. I've always been a keener. I don't look at it as something that's going to destroy me. I have the ability to say, also in that there's jobs I don't want to do that come at me. And I realized that I'm in a privileged position to be able to say that. But I also realize how unbelievably lucky and grateful I am. And I know it sounds, hokey to some people, but I have spent years building the muscle of, I do my list when I lie in bed of my 5 things from my day that I'm grateful for. And that's just something that keeps me grounded and keeps me mindful and helps me get through my life. Those are just the ways I figure out how it's going to be okay to get old and not work and all that,
Right.
I know that there's lots I'm grateful for too.
I want to go back a little bit because this is another thing I would love to see. I'd love to see us stop doing as women who have earned. I wish we would take away that word. I'm privileged to have had the career that, but you
Mm.
also earned it. You also worked for it. And it's fascinating to me that you won't ever hear a man who has worked from the time he was 5 in a craft, in a field, in an industry, and end up with
Mhm.
an illustrious career so deserved, say, "Oh, it was my no, it was you earned it. Like you flat out earned it. Like it wasn't handed to you. You trained, you auditioned, you were rejected, and instead of getting your debt getting down and being like, "Oh, woe is me, I can't do this anymore," you kept pushing forward. Like you didn't quit. You persevered. Like everything that you have is because of your work ethic. Yes, your talent, but it's so interesting to me that as women, I find we do that. I mean, yes, I guess there have been times where my husband says it's a privilege to get to do what I do. I get to play for a living,
Mhm.
but he's
Mhm.
never once kind of discounted that. And I think it's maybe because as women, we're more empathetic. I don't know, but I'm thinking of your body of work and I'm thinking about knowing as an actress who walked away because it was too much for me. Like it did eat me alive to be like, why didn't I get that part?
Mhm.
And not everybody's wired the same way. So I
Mhm.
look at you and I'm like, that is a strength and fortitude of character. And this industry is
It
not for
can
the faint of heart.
No, it's not. But I mean, there have been times where it has destroyed me too. Like it's been really hard. There's no doubt. When the street legal revival didn't work, it
Yeah.
freaking destroyed me. It was really, really hard. And, then to be told, you've had your time, honey. Like, that's it. You've had your time.
Wow.
You're older now. You're not going to work. If street legal had happened, I wouldn't have Scotland. I wouldn't have this house. I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And so, and I know that in my life now, but I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this is a better way for me to live. This is fuller for me in my heart.
Mm.
And so, like, it was really sad and really hard that it didn't work and it didn't happen. But I would rather, like, be here in Scotland than be doing that again.
What was the pull to Scotland for you and Peter?
Well, the boys have golfed here for 20 years, and they brought me, I don't know, six years ago was the first time I came here. And I don't know what it was. It was just something unbelievably strong. I just felt like it really, like, I just loved it. And then we saw a friend, we bought these 250-year-old barns, steadings, and we turned it into a house.
Wow.
And so it was in the building of that, these old, old stones and this thing that's been on this land for years and this area and the beach, what the beach does to me, and
Mm.
the topography of the Highlands. Like I got here last night after being away for a month, and like literally the line of the Highlands, it's like it, I don't know, I literally feel it in my soul. Even though I wasn't born here and I didn't grow up here, and yes, way back in my ancestry there is Scottish blood, but there's more Italian blood. So like,
Yeah.
but it's just something that feels really, really right for me right now. And
Wonder if you went back, like if under hypnosis, if you'd been there
mm,
in another lifetime, because it sounds like you're literally connected, like tethered from your soul.
I
It's
feel
what it
that way.
sounds like.
I really feel that way. And you know, I knew I would love it, but I didn't know I'd love it this much. I just didn't know I'd love it this much.
Do you think
And
that
so,
plays a big part in, because you've said it a couple of times now, that it's the last role I've played in this life. I'm now retired. I'm never, like, do you feel like having so much, like, to be so rooted and so grounded here in your home in Scotland, do you feel like that plays a big part in the contentment of, like, if this were to be it forever, I would be fine?
yes, also I got to also it was one of the greatest parts to play that I just finished doing. You know, Desiree Armfelt and the Little Night Music. It was just like it was a
I
fantastic
wish I'd been
role.
able to
And
see it. It looked
it was it was a fantastic production, and it was great to do and to sing with an orchestra. It was a great, great experience.
love
And
that.
they don't come along that often anymore. Really, really, really great, meaty parts. Like they just don't. I For women, unless you're a mega star, you know,
Mm.
lots of women work at 62, but more don't. And so I you know, I get, I'll work again. I guess maybe something will happen again. But if not,
I think you
it
will.
doesn't define me. It just doesn't define me as a woman anymore. Thank God I don't need it to be happy.
Yeah.
If I did, then it would be really sad life for me because there isn't that much stuff out there for me.
Yeah. So I ask this of some of my guests because not everybody is so centered and grounded and rooted in life. If there's something that you could impart on anybody listening right now who it maybe is in those transition years and doesn't feel like they know their value, their worth, or who they are, is there any advice you can give to somebody listening right now who's feeling maybe lost and feeling insecure about these coming years? I say these coming years because if we're in our 50s,
Hmm.
heading into our 60s, is there any wisdom you could share with us?
I think that maybe not looking without, like outward for the validation. I think that finding the ways to empower yourself and validate yourself, validate your joy and validate your pain and all of that. I think that women's anxiety or joy doesn't get as validated as men's does, and
Yeah,
especially as you get older. And I think that you have to do it for yourself first. I think you really do. It's lovely if someone says and gives you validation or gives you the gift of honoring who you are. But if you can't do it for yourself first, then I don't think you'll really be able to receive it properly, even when someone else gives it to you.
I agree.
And I think it really, you know, it's like maybe, and I can't, it's harder to speak, you know, to someone younger because, you know, in our 20s, we all strove in a different way than we do when we're older. We
Yeah.
don't strive the same way when we're older. I think we know our worth a little bit better when we're older. Hopefully you've done the work that it takes, and it's work. You build the muscle. It's like you go to the gym to work out the body. You have to work out the spirit too. You have to. And if that
I love
means
that.
lighting a candle, then you friggin' light the candles. Just, you know, singing in the car, then sing in the car. You know,
Yeah.
Whatever it is that builds that muscle for you, you have to do it, because if not now, when? There's no more time for, oh, I'll do it someday. I'll get to that.
I love that.
I want to in the future sometime. Really? Why not now? What are you waiting for? What are we all waiting for? How many more Septembers have you got? Like, how many more summers have you got to plan? Like, just do it, man. Just do it. And again, to go to that thing of, well, people act like, well, you're privileged, so you can make plans to do wonderful things. The wonderful thing can be lighting a candle. Like, just do the wonderful things. Put on the lipstick. Like, I don't care if you're just going to Sobeys to get your groceries. Like, if it brings joy, then do it, right? Like, so I just think, if not now, when? Get to it, because, it's one of the reasons why I don't have a problem saying how old I am or how old I am. Yeah. I have too many friends who didn't get to this age. I have too many friends who died young that didn't get to say they're 62. Why would I ever not want to shout that from the rooftops? Yeah, I made it here. I made it here with all my body parts, and I'm grateful for that. And if you can't stand in that gratitude, then you better learn how, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that is the most perfect, beautiful place to wrap that up. It's inspiring. It's thoughtful. It really, I could weep right now. I just feel so, I mean, we don't know, and so many don't make it. So what are we waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
What are you waiting for?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you
I knew this
so
was going to
much
be
for asking me.
I knew this was going to be beautiful. I didn't know. So I'm so grateful. And this is going to be one of my 5 things when I go to sleep tonight. And I mean that truly from my heart.
Thank you. My heart to yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Okay. I'm so grateful you joined in on this conversation. Subscribe where you're listening, leave a comment, connect with us on social media for more, and all the links, you can find them in the show notes. We will see you at the next one.